to work in inches, yards. We don't support chains or any of those oddball measurement units yet. Also your height. So if you're doing 3D, you want to be very precise if you're mapping elevation changes. So you want to be able to set your target height. That's the height that you're shooting to, and also the height of your instrument, the height that the laser's at. So 2D, you don't have to worry about these, but for 3D, we'll set those. Here's the magnetic declination setting you were asking. So many users get confused on this. We find the easiest way is to just set it to 0, or not set it out of the box on your laser, and then just tell Lasergis it's set to 0 and automatically look it up. And Lasergis will look up, it has the world magnetic model that's valid to 2015 built in on board, and that'll give you the exact magnetic declination for your location of your reference point at the current time. Finally, we have attribute settings. So you saw I had slope, I had distance, and also height. We can set up a whole bunch more. So all the raw data that's coming in from the laser can be stored in the attributes of the features that you have selected or the features that you're capturing, provided you turn them on. So you can turn these on for the ones you want, and then it's based on the names of attributes that you have that link up with these. For example, if I want to store reference coordinates for my Y, I can have a ref coord Y, ref underscore Y, and anything else you want, you can add to the setup file, the XML file. For example, for height, we had an attribute called HT, and everything fed right into there.
So Craig, how would I just get started shooting features? I mean, how do I know where I'm shooting from within the map?
Okay, so there's this concept of a reference point, right? The reference point is generally your occupied point. It's where you're standing when you shoot the laser. So you just need to tell Lasergis with an arcpad environment where that reference point is. And there's a lot of different ways. We saw using the GPS. We saw using the existing point feature. Those work very well. You can also put in some XYZ coordinates or XY coordinates if you're mapping 2D. You may have a known survey marker. You may have a really good aerial photo, really high resolution, well-referenced aerial photo, or some GIS features that intersect at a known point that you can occupy in your map. And so you can just use the map to tap on that location and set the reference point that way. For GPS reference points, there's a few ways to manage it to make it easy. You can either say, hey, give me a GPS point right now, and I'll use that one. Or you can have it managed in the next shot dialog, where you would tell it to either use GPS for every shot or just for the next shot, and have it dynamically update that.
So speaking of the next shot, can you actually run through that of what that next shot screen looks like?
Sure. So the next shot dialog, this is kind of your window into your next shot or series of shots that you're going to be taking in this project. And basically it gives you some information on the left side as to how you're set up. What layer are you going to be capturing to? What are your reference coordinates currently set? And if you're capturing 3D, what is your Z value and height set up? So green means everything's set up. If you don't have everything set up properly, you'll get it in red. So you'll see no coordinates or no target layer. Down here on the left, we have our rapid fire modes. So you saw the first few shots I took, I had to accept my measurements, fill in my form, that kind of mode. If we want to go into a rapid fire mode, we can turn these options on to have, again, the next shot or next series of shots automatically accept my measurements and or automatically hit the OK for the feature for me. So we can automatically fill that in if I have some default attributes, or I don't need to worry about the attributes, like if I'm doing a traverse. So those are the left side. The right side is how the shot's going to actually be used. So traverse or side shot. All right, side shot means I'm standing on my reference point and taking shots without moving it. Traverse means after I've taken my shot, I'm going to then move and occupy that new calculated point and continue shooting from there. Foresight backside mode. So most of us traditionally shoot in foresight mode. I'm standing on my reference point and I shoot to an unknown point. We can also work the other way. You can be standing in an area you don't know, but be able to see a reference point that you may have the coordinates for, or maybe a feature on your map. We can then go into backside mode, and I can shoot from an unknown point to a reference point and have it calculate my position that way. Finally, the GPS modes tell us how we want to use GPS shot to shot. So no GPS means use the reference points I've set. Use GPS once. That was what we did in Traverse. It took GPS to lock my first reference point in, and then let me work off of that single reference point without moving it. Or the kind of more traditional GPS offset mode people have been using for years, which is every offset I take needs a GPS point to associate them that way.
Okay, so what about just other tools? I mean, are other tools available on this?
Sure. Let me just show you one more thing. As the shot's coming in, if we're not in the rapid fire mode, we'll get this chance to accept the measurements, and so it just gives us a rundown of what measurements came in. If we're doing 3D mapping or a 3D point, we have the ability to adjust the target height. For example, you go to set your shot, your guy with the target calls out, hey, it's 2.8 feet. you try and shoot, you just can't get it, too much foliage in the way, so they move it up, and these things might change shot to shot, so you still have this kind of last chance to adjust the target height. And again, if you have auto measurements on, you won't ever see this. The measurements will just come directly in. To answer your other question about what are the tools are, so we've seen raw data. Raw data is very powerful, showing us our actual shots. We've seen the remote fire, how I can actually send the laser shot without touching my laser and doing it off of my data collector. And then I just want to drill in a little more on the get length area tool, because I think it's a very powerful tool. So we saw it in the context of traverse. Very powerful to know when you've done a point traverse, does it close, what is its acreage, or hectares all common units, and what is its length. But this doesn't only work for points, it also works for any feature. So if I select a line, it'll give me its length, plus it'll close that out to show me what the closed area and any closure error would be. And then for a polygon, it'll just give me the information about that polygon. But it's very useful in that it gives it to me in a bunch of different measurements.
Wow, that sounds awesome. I think you covered it all, unless you want to show another quick demo of something.
Sure.
All right.
Why not? What would you like to see, Paul?
Well, just show me another, again, like maybe starting from scratch, like start a new.
Okay, yeah, that's good. So let me go. I'm just going to go into project setup here. In this case, let's say I've got no data. So I'll just say start a new project. I'll leave my projection as lat long, but I can change it to any projection. And so I've got no map point layers. I'll go ahead and I'll add my simple points from my template layer. That'll create one for me. I'll go ahead and add some reference points. So now I've got something to work with. I'll say OK. So now I'm in my blank map. Let's see. I'll go ahead and make my simple point layer editable. I'll go ahead and turn GPS on again. So we got GPS feed. And now for my next shot here, I can see here I haven't yet set reference points. But what I want to do is take a side shot, and I want to use GPS just for this one shot. And let's not auto accept. Let's go ahead and actually explicitly accept. And I will now fire the laser. So we get our laser shot come in. We can accept those measurements. And we'll get our point captured for us. We'll go ahead and say OK. And we can now continue on in that manner. One thing I want to show you is that if we go and turn my raw data off, if we actually go and look in this template layer here, and turn GPS off as well, zoom into this point a bit more, I can actually go in and identify this feature. And what you'll see is, in addition to the simple form that came up, we just gave it an ID without notes. But if you look in the attributes, this default layer here, or this template layer here, has all the different measurements, or many of the different measurements that can be received. So we haven't taken a height shot yet, but we can see our slope, our range, our bearing, and our reference coordinates are all stored without us having to do anything. And these units here, the range and slope, or the slope degrees, but the range units, height units, they'll all be based on our preferences. So if I'm working in meters, I'll get meters. If I'm working in yards, I'll get yards, regardless of how I'm set up on the actual laser.
That's pretty awesome. So you guys, we're going to have to wrap it up. Again, people online, please submit the questions, and we'll certainly get back to you as soon as possible. There's two websites I'd just like to bring to you guys' attention. We do have, ESRI partner hardware site does have a package available for the trupulse and the Lasergis software. And then you can also visit lasertech.com, Lasergis for arcpad. So that's it. You guys, we'll be out just outside. If you got any more questions, we can certainly go. Thanks for coming.